Welcome to This is Getting Old, Moving Towards an Age-Friendly World. I'm your host, Melissa Batchelor, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Alzheimer's care and swallowing problems. And this is part 3 in a 4-part series. In part 3, we're going to be talking about adaptive equipment. In part 1, I talked about the basics of swallowing problems. In part 2, I talked about modifying textures and how to build flavor, ways to build flavor to foods that you might have to modify. And in part 4, I'll be talking about how to maximize eating independence. So first thing you need to know about how and when to choose different adaptive equipment is that you really need to think about what the underlying issue is that you're trying to fix. So does this person have limited movement or range of motion in an upper extremity? Do they have difficulty with their hands, so dexterity limitations? Are you looking to try to improve their ability to feed themselves? Are you trying to prevent them from spilling something, or are you actually trying to help them manage a swallowing problem? And so we're going to talk about 4 different categories of adaptive equipment, but you first have to know kind of what problem you're trying to solve. And so the 4 different types of adaptive equipment are non-skid or non-slip mats. We'll talk about some different types of cups and mugs that you can use, or plate guard, or maybe you need to do something to the utensils to modify those. So to get started with non-skid and non-slip mats, these are really good for holding dishes in place. So these are kind of those sticky, like little square things that you can get. It could be put underneath a plate to prevent the plate from sliding away from the person. You could also, if the person wanted to stir with a bowl or something, you can, and the bowl keeps moving around. So that's another great way to use a non-slip mat. Maybe you can put these on somebody's chair tray. You can put it on a wheelchair seat to prevent them from sliding out. You can put them on footrests to help keep the foot in place, or maybe on like their bedside table if they need to be able to get to a cup or something on their bedside table without it being pushed away from them. You can also take those the non-skid mats and you can cut them and put them around toothbrush handles or maybe a razor so that the person has a bigger grip. We call that like a built-up grip. Or you could actually put their cell phone on it. So when they go to pick up their cell phone, there's a little bit of traction there before, so it doesn't slide off whatever surface it's sitting on. The second category are different types of adaptive cups. And so there are cups that are weighted. They have a weight in the base, and these are really good for preventing spills. Maybe you need a wider base so that so it's easier for them to set it down without it topping over. You can get a closed handled cup, this was the example that I shared with my grandmother. Got her a closed handled cup so that she could just slide her hand in there and pick her cup up to drink it. If the person has maybe too much of a trimmer to go in through that handle, you can also find them with an open handle. So they just have to slide their hand underneath it and then they can grasp the cup. And we'll talk about different lids that are helpful in just a moment. And then there's a nosy cup. So this is where part of the cup is cut out. And so that when you drink from the regular side of the cup and tip it up, there's a spot for your nose so that you don't have to hyperextend your neck. And so that's called a nosy cup, N-O-S-E-Y cup. And then there's an Infiltrator where a lot of times if you have a swallowing problem, a speech and language therapist will recommend that you tuck your chin before you swallow. And so an Infiltrator type cup encourages that chin tuck and also prevents you having to extend your neck back in order to drink. So all the things that we take for granted if we don't have a swallowing problem, but you even have to have range of motion in your neck to drink normally. So thirdly, we'll talk about different types of lids. So in thinking about lids, you could have a long spout type of lid that goes on, and this could have a straw hole in it or not, but it's just a really good way to control the flow of the liquid. The opposite of that is to have a short spout, and that also could have a straw hole or not, but it also helps with controlling the flow of the liquid. Maybe you just need a lid that has a straw hole in it to prevent splashing or spilling. And that's what the type of cup that I had gotten from my grandmother. Or it's basically just like a no spill type of cup. And so you might have to suck on that lid in order to get the liquid out. Regarding plates, you can have partitioned plates. So this is where they're basically sectioned off. There might be 3 compartments that you could put food in. It'll keep the food separated. It also gives an edge so that you can scoop each of those food items separately. And that could be a standard height, or you can get just one, like it could be standard where it's all the way around, or it could be just one side of that, of the plate. Then you can also have a scoop bowl or a dish. And this has like a high curved rim to it on one side. And that's helpful for, you can use your utensil and it's lower on one side so that you can get into the bowl and then scoop the other side's higher. So when you scoop it, it gives something to press against if someone can only use one hand. Sometimes just the inner lip needs to be higher so that for doing the scooping, but sometimes it needs to be higher on the outside. And so those are different ways that we can modify plates. And these can be you can either buy the plate itself with the plate guard on it, or you can buy pieces that clip onto your existing plates. And so that can be helpful also. And then the last category we're going to talk about are utensils. And for utensils, you can have a weighted utensil. So these are about 4 to 7 ounces. And just the added weight on the end of the handle can be enough sometimes to stabilize somebody's hand if they have a tremor, or if they have weak grip strength. You can have a built-up handle. So just like I talked about with the non-skid mats, you can use that to build up the handle, or you can buy them built up. And so these are good if a person has a weak grip because they're bigger, and so you don't have to tighten your hand quite as much in order to hold them yourself. A coated spoon, a lot of times these are like if you went to Target and went to the product for babies and toddlers, you'll see these coated spoons, and it's a plastic coating that goes on the end of the spoon, or on the end of the spoon, or they're typically spoons, but it can protect your lips and your teeth when you're trying to eat. But this is not recommended for someone who's a heavy biter. And sometimes with Alzheimer's disease, when you put very late in the disease, if you put a fork or a spoon into the person's mouth, they're going to clamp down on it. And that's just because that reflex comes back. And so then you just have to wait. And so coated spoons are not recommended if someone's already in that phase of the disease, or if someone bites on the utensil every time you put it in their mouth. You can buy rocker knives, and these are just basically are rounded. And so that instead of having to go back and forth to cut your food, you can rock the knife and still be able to cut your food independently. Other types of utensils are bendable utensils. So this could be where the shaft of the utensil is bent either to the right or the left. And this helps with maximize the person's ability to feed themselves if they have limited range of motion. The final 2 things that you can do with a utensil is you can buy a universal strap. And so that way you can strap the utensil, put the strap on the utensil. So it might be like a Velcro hook or has a loop closure. And that way you can put it on their hand, and it doesn't matter if they can hold it with their hand or not. They could keep their hand flat and actually still be able to feed themselves independently. And then the last thing is to do utensil tubing. And basically this is like a cut to length foam tubing that lets you put it on the end of any handle. And so this could be used for more than just utensils. You could put it on the end of a razor, you could put it on somebody's toothbrush, but that's a way to modify existing items in the home without purchasing them separately. So those are just some different adaptive equipment pieces and ideas to help someone with eating, drinking, and swallowing. So be sure to go back and listen to part 1 about the basics of swallowing problems, and part 2 around modifying textures or how to build flavors. And then tune in for part 4, where we're going to be talking about how to maximize someone's independence with eating.
Thank you for tuning in to This is Getting Old, Moving Towards an Age-Friendly World. I'm your host, Melissa Batchelor, and if you'd like to learn more, you can check out my other episodes on my YouTube channel by subscribing and ringing the bell to get immediate notifications when new content comes out. In addition, you can also find the audio version of the podcast on Amazon Music, Spotify, iTunes, and Stitcher. Please feel free to leave an honest review because more reviews mean more awareness of the podcast and helps us move towards an age-friendly world. If you have a comment or a question, you can visit my website, MelissaBPhD.com. Go to the Contact Melissa tab, and you can leave me a voice message. You never know, I might just include your question or your comment in an upcoming episode.